So let's get started because your time is valuable. So welcome, Bruce. Glad we could finally make this conversation happen. Um,
Yes.
so tell us a little about yourself, Bruce, and your mental health warrior program.
Okay. I'll give you the short version kind of why it started and at the same time kind of explain the program. Um, so this all started and I created the program due to some personal challenges I struggled with for over 20 years. So bipolar disorder, alcoholism, anxiety disorders, all piled on top of each other. Now they started out when I was in high school and I started doing things and even things like going to school, or at that point I was even an EMT, and I kind of got jumped into life, like into the deep end of the pool, if you will. But what I didn't know was I knew how to do things, like I knew how to be an EMT, or I knew how to go to school and learn, but I didn't know how to handle any of the emotions that might come with going into like a classroom or something where there's a lot of people, because my anxiety would take over. Now, what happened was, as this kept going, what happened was I really just didn't know how to handle the emotions in life. And at the time, I knew the emotions were all over the map too with bipolar. So what's happening is I'm going further along in life and I'm going through high school, go to college, even get into an IT job, and then go on with regular kind of life things, all those life adventures. But what's happening is I can't handle any of the emotions. So if there's a trouble at work or a trouble with a project, I would start having the anxiety creep in. Or suddenly my bipolar might say, oh, that was a terrible project, even though I just got accolades at work, much like anything you did at school or any of these things. So you can kind of see it was this long journey where basically what I was trying to do, and then this is kind of where alcoholism comes into play too, is I found that's a great way to hide from your emotions. And at the time, if you can't deal with them, well, my idea was you get through them. You basically hide from them or you try and ignore them. And what's happening is, of course, as you do that and as you're ignoring all of your emotions, that's so integral part of life that you start running into a lot of problems, because not only can you not handle the situations, but then you throw in like a mental health challenge or something when you're drinking, and it keeps spiraling more and more out of control, because then you bring in all those missteps, the wreckages of the day or the past, and it just keeps building up, which of course wants you to seek out and find more short-term solutions, or I would call even kind of off the wall solutions. When I was depressed, I said, well, you know what? Once you get a job, you start making a little money, you say, I can go do some adventure. I can buy something. Well, sure, I'm happy for an hour or two. And then I realized how much money was spent, or I realized, why did I even buy this? Now I have four of them. What am I thinking? And I'm like, now I've caused more problems. So as we go along and this journey of getting more into life and doing things, I'm actually getting also kind of rising through life, if you will. The deep end and the drop offs are getting even more severe. So now it's not just my bipolar sending me a little bit out of control, if you will, because I'm not managing the emotions. I'm ending up, of course, in problems, maybe running into problems with the law because you cause a disturbance, or you get out of control because your anger comes out. With, bipolar, sometimes we can't control the emotions. So now I'm running into those circumstances that I call, now your adventures have that deep spiral, and they just keep spiraling you down. And what happened is this went on for over 20 years. Now, to the outside, of course, I'm making a successful progression. I'm going through school, I'm learning things, I'm interacting with people, but every time it's more like I'm white knuckling it through life. And then the drop offs keep hitting me. And then, of course, people don't know what to do, including myself. So after 20 years of this roller coaster ride, if you will, I get to the point where these challenges have even pushed me into now nights in jail, or then because I'm out of control, I'm committed for like a 3-day psychiatric hold. So now I get to visit institutions and find the 3-day hold where you have to kind of prove to people, which is funny because there's a problem and you're working with people, but you're saying, I can go back out. I'll use the tools. I'll use this. So I start going in and trying to use these tools. I start going to doctors, therapists. I try things, but again, I'm still failing. And I'm like, I'm taking all their tools. I'm great while I'm in the therapy, but then what do I do when I'm out there and I got another 2 weeks for another appointment? So what happened was and this is where the story finally culminated after these 20 years, is I got to a day where I really just didn't want to be part of life anymore. I thought there was no end because I had no solution. And I thought, this is the way I am. This is just it. I have these challenges. I've even identified them at this point through doctors and things. But I'm like, there's no solution out there. Nothing's working. But then I was given a second chance. And so what I did was I said, I got to set out and find a solution because I got all these things going on that are great. But what am I supposed to do with the wreckage and deal with forward thinking? So I started looking really deep and trying to think what was the common thread. So I found there were two threads. I'm like, of course, I'm at the middle of everything. So it was like, that's kind of the dull one because you're always at the middle of your life's adventures or whatever struggles. But then I realized it's my emotions. And like I said at the beginning, I got thrown in, but I didn't realize I wasn't able to handle the emotions no matter what we're talking about. And by not handling my emotions, not only could I not like take part in the full experience of anything from a work to a personal, and I realized that's the key, the emotions. They're at the center with me. Then I took a step back too, and I said, well, emotions are in everything in life. I couldn't think of a single thing, and I always challenge people. I say, is there anything you do during the day that doesn't have emotions? And you have that full spectrum. So yes, some things can be bad. Some things can be bad experiences, part of life. But there's also the good. And when you kind of tamp all of that down, and I said, if they have that much power to do that, what if I create this mental health warrior program where we flip it and say, let's use that power? And that's where it started to be kind of neat because it was like, we're going to use that power. And I kind of like to use the word self-empowerment at this point. Because the missing piece was I felt like even with all this help, it was always dependent on something external. And I struggled mightily when I was by myself or with family or anything. That anxiety would come in. The bipolar might sending off even though we're having a good time. I'm depressed, things like that. And I said, wait a minute, if I'm empowered, I can bring that with me all the time. And that was kind of the start, if you will, of the mental health warrior program idea. And so what happened was I said, now I'm in the IT field at this point, and I'm finding all these answers, and I'm starting to actually live life. And I like to say that because everybody goes, so we'll live life. But I said before, I was just kind of like living life flatline. Now I'm actually enjoying all these days. Even the simple stuff that before I would either miss because the emotions were spinning around, or the things that like with alcohol, of course, you miss out on massive amount of times and things because you're checked out from your emotions and from life. So I found, wow, this is amazingly self-empowering. And I found that when you combine that with extra help if you need it up here, or if you're just by yourself, you have kind of a full set, a full approach that you can really take control of your life and you can actually embrace your emotions. And then again, it just keeps building how much power we all have. And I said, okay, what do I do with this? I mean, it's working for me. And that was kind of the start. I said, I think I'm going to try and write this down in some articles, which turned into a book. And that was the start of this first book, which kind of took off. And I have to backtrack for a minute. It's funny. As I started putting all this together, I had left the IT field because I'd been in there for 15 years. And yet, even though I had achieved things, I was a project manager, I was doing development, I wasn't happy, just like I wasn't happy with all the stuff we had. So here I am having this grand existence, but I'm really unhappy. So I started doing things like I got certified as a personal trainer, a health coach. Then I tried to do nutrition. So I'm like looking all the angles, and I still, again, every time it came back up to emotions. Yes, these are important, but we bounce them in or tie them in with emotions. Wow, we've got a powerful tool. And so hence the whole idea of this mental health warrior program, where we give some structure, we have this approach where we start out and we say the biggest thing is you can be self-empowered, which means every day we're going to have emotions in our life. But how exciting is it if we don't fear them anymore? And I kind of became this thing of now I embrace them and I embrace the full spectrum, even the bad days, even the bad struggles. And all of a sudden it kind of morphed into this program and I put it down and wrote a book on it. And now I built several more to kind of keep expanding it. So that's kind of And I know it took it longer than I thought, but that's my story of what started it, but also what it's about, because I find it so exciting. And what I've done is I decided to become a writer and then do talks and do other things to let everybody else know what I found, because this is too good to not share. And I said, it's amazing how much power emotions have and how much we miss each day because we're either not in tune with them, or we only want to pick a little bit of the spectrum. I just want the good ones. Isn't that how it should be? And it's like, no, there's actual power and joy in everything, even some of the tough times, and even ways to then deal with the past, because you can flip it. I kind of like to use that a lot. You can flip it around on them and say, hey, emotions, you were in control before, and I know you're powerful, but today I'm back in control. So that's kind of the core of the idea of the program, or being a mental health warrior, I should say.
Yes, awesome. When writing the books or getting to empowering people, were there any influences you had, authors that you drew some inspiration from or helped you?
Well, there's definitely a lot of authors. Probably some of the main books you've read. An Unquiet Mind is one that common people talk about with bipolar. What I really was impressed by, and I could name all of them, but what I did was I was reading all the books because I was too afraid to talk to anybody about it. So I had my library of all these authors. And what I said was, I want to bring mine into that for all the people, again, as that first step, because that's the hardest part, is even coming to terms with it yourself. And I found that to be so empowering, because I'm trying to come in and show people that this program, I call it a program because it's more like an umbrella. And there's all these topics that you can work on your mental health with. And then within that, they're like warrior tools and different things you can do for your mental health each day. But all of them are designed to work into your life that everybody can do. So these are not things you have to go in for appointments. These aren't things that you can't just use throughout the day. And people won't even see it because you're working on yourself, and using your tools. And it's really exciting because we can get past that worry. And once you get past the worry, then the next thing was, I saw other speakers, like you're saying, who influenced. I saw other people talking about it, or I'd see people in the past that had talked at meetings and things. And I thought, okay, that's the next step. Take the courage to stand up and then share some of that. Hence the reason I fumbled around to get on Instagram Live today and said, I know it's going to be tough and I don't know what I'm doing, but I have a tool to manage anxiety, so I'll persevere through so we can connect, things like that, or talking to groups. And it's funny, I like to lead off of my talks. I say, because I've talked at some companies and stuff, and I'm talking to a big group, and I say, okay, here's the first thing. I showed up. Because in the past, Bruce would have been out the door, making an excuse, not here. And they're like, oh, good point, because I have some anxiety. I know what you're saying. And I'm saying I have, generalized anxiety about everything. So worry about everything. And I'm just showing up to show you, look, I was a guy who couldn't go in the room at a big meeting without a series of ways to manage it that were all short term. And today I'm like, okay, I can go into meetings or big groups. And I just love that because it's like proving to myself, but also showing others.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we froze through that last couple. What was that last thing you said? You kind of froze a little bit.
Oh, just a little bit of proof to myself and then to others. And that's a big part of the Warrior program is once you, to me, and I totally understand the first step is the hardest, but by flipping it as a warrior, what you say is, hey, if I acknowledge a problem, and I don't mean to the other people first, because the first one starts with you. And once you acknowledge the problem yourself, it's very freeing because all of a sudden you realize that problem, which of course is a challenge like bipolar, and you say, but wait a minute, now I got a starting point and I can learn all about it. It's like you're getting a sneak peek into the research and you say, well, what does bipolar do? And the doctors will tell you. And then you say, oh, now I know to be prepared. There isn't something wrong with me. I just have a disorder that sends my emotions to both ends of the spectrum. Well, now I know what kind of tools I might need, and then again, the next step of a warrior, and I always like to tell people is you have all these tools, I'm providing all these different topics, but you get to pick and choose, again, what works for your life. And that's what's exciting too, because some of the things I have can work for everybody, but you can interpret them differently. Some of the tools I created in the first book, like some mindset rules, and they're not rules where it says do this, Don't go swimming after you eat. You know, you'll get a cramp and you won't be able to go. But there'll be a tool that says something like, learn to respond, not react to life's challenges. And the idea is you just click on it and you put it in your head in the morning and you say, today I'm not going to just react. So all of a sudden something goes bad, your car gets a flat, you know, you get cut off in traffic. I'm going to take a pause and I recenter. And it's made this huge difference. But I needed that reminder. So that's like one of my warrior tools, if you will.
Very cool. So in closing, if someone's watching this and they're struggling to take that first step, maybe they've got generalized anxiety, they're bipolar, maybe they're coping by using alcohol, what would you say to them right now?
I would say the first thing you can do is come out to my website. And I'm not saying that to promote it. I'm saying because it begins with my story.
Yep.
And there's a long version of it, kind of what I gave here a little bit. But go there and see that story because it's going to show you, hey, there's other people who struggle with this. And the biggest thing is there's a solution. And it's in our emotions, which means you, me, everybody has the solution. And we just need to find ways to make them work for us. And that's exciting. And then I think there's lots of free blog articles and things to get you started. So some of those rules and things are out there. And I'm just saying go there because it's a resource. And then you can combine it with whatever you have, you know, family, friends, and that. You got to get through that first step. And that's kind of my way to do it is to go out and see, hey, here's somebody else who's been through it. And I know the struggles. I still struggle today. But every day I remind myself there's an answer.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's cool, isn't it, to know there's an answer?
That's right. All right. So thank you, Bruce. This is a great conversation.
Thank you.
Anybody watching this, follow Bruce on Instagram. He's attached to this video. Go on Amazon and search for Bruce. All his books are there. Thank you for all you're doing for the world, Bruce.
Thank you for having me on.
Trying to help everybody with anxiety, depression, mental health problems. All right?
Yes, absolutely. We're all in it together. So let's keep going.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.